Marriage, the most sacred of relationships, yet time and life make it fragile. Love, trust, respect, and desire, all elements of a successful marriage. Yet so many of us along the way forget. We lead busy lives. We go through changes, big and small. We build walls to protect ourselves. It does not have to be this way. There are clear and exciting ways to bring your marriage and life back on track. Welcome to the Couples Expert Podcast with Stuart Fensterheim.
Hi, and welcome to the Couples Expert Podcast. This is Stuart Fensterheim, the Couples Expert. I am going to first off apologize to all of you because I'm doing this podcast a bit more nasal than I normally am. I have been a little bit under the weather, but my commitment to all of you says I should do this podcast. Hopefully you'll understand that I don't sound my same old self. And what happened today, of all days, with me recording this podcast, is my wife and I got into a little bit of a tiff. What I mean by that is that she and I had an argument this morning regarding my medicine. Now, I want to know if all of you can understand and relate to this, but when you wake up and you're a guy and you're not feeling well, everything doesn't work well. And my wife has a tendency to say to me that I get whiny. Do I sound whiny to you? I couldn't find the Dayquil, and I went looking for it. I found Sudafed, but the Dayquil is what I wanted. You know, when you're sick, you want what you want. And the argument that my wife and I got into was so ludicrous because I kept complaining about not being able to find the Dayquil. And she was basically saying to me, well, take the Sudafed. But the Sudafed's not what I want. I want what I want when I'm sick. And I'm not quite sure why women don't just get that. But I really do. And I understand why we got a little bit of a detached interaction. Is more about that she wants me to really not feel like she isn't doing her part as my wife in keeping Dayquil in the home. The truth is, I don't really care about the Dayquil. But that's really what I wanted. So what I would like from all of you is to think about when you're in a little bit of a less positive place, to be a bit more understanding when your partner maybe snaps at you. Because it's not fun for us being ill, but at the same time, it's also not fair to our wives and partners if we don't allow them to be themselves and really have a feeling that if I could have seen what she was saying, I would have been able to clearly state to her that it's okay. I'm not really whining about the Dayquil. I just couldn't find it. And if we don't have it, I'll take something else. But it's so interesting how in a marriage, two people who are sitting there interacting are having different conversations. And that's why it's so important when something like that happens and you do get triggered, and it will happen over and over again, that you really can slow the conversation down and allow yourself to really talk about what's really happening between the two of you. And that's what we were able to do. So by the time she left to go to church, I was fine. She was fine. We were loving each other again, but she wouldn't let me kiss her goodbye. And I hated that because I don't blame her really, because of my being ill. But I wanted to just share that to you because it was such a real life situation. But I wanted to just welcome all of you to this episode of the Couples Expert Podcast. And it's episode number 134. 134 episodes. And I've named this podcast The Ghoulish Side of Marriage because what I want to talk about is the things that sometimes happen between people and that what we don't think enough about is how important our marriage is to us. And that when we're in a relationship that's struggling, you'll really understand that unless things are clicking the way that you want it to be, it really causes the individual, the person, more harm than good. So that when we talk about it's nice to have a good relationship, I'm going to suggest to all of you, and I've said this many, many times, it's not just nice to have one. It's critical to have one. And it's critical to have a good relationship, not just because it makes the world go round and it makes the world feel like a better place, which it definitely does, but it makes the individual feel better about themselves. That's the key here. That's what this topic is really about, is that it's really ghoulish if you're in a relationship that isn't working because of the impact it has on the individual, not just the relationship. And what you know is if you've listened to this podcast for more than just a few weeks, you will know that there's not many people out there more dedicated and passionate about marriage. Not many people more than me. Being remarried in my life, after having had a number of other relationships, I really know the difference between being in a happy marriage and one that's not working. I'll take this marriage over the others, that's for sure. Because what this marriage has allowed me to do is really feel so terrific about myself. And it really is part of the journey that I've been on to really help people understand that having a marriage, having a relationship where the two of you know you're with that one person in the world that loves you more than anyone, nothing is better. How you feel about yourself is on cloud nine most of the time. And I've really spent the better part of the past 45 years reading about relationship, researching relationship theories, living and learning to help all of you have the necessary skills and tools to create that relationship that generally you only see in movies and fairy tales. And I want to tell you that it's bullshit that it's only in movies and fairy tales. You can have this kind of marriage. Just join me on this journey of changing relationships, one relationship at a time. You know, I've lived in the worst and shittiest relationships you can imagine. So I want to start with the negative, because I always like ending with the positives. And I came across this list, and the list is so wonderful because it really is a list of how negative relationships can be. And I want to read them to you because when I came across this, I just laughed and laughed and laughed because when I read each statement, what I want you to think about is what does that really mean to you in terms of your relationship? So number one, marriage is not just a noun. It can be a life sentence. Number two, they say love is blind, so why do we want to poke the eyes out of our partners? Number three, marriage can be a three-ring circus: engagement, wedding, and suffering. And four, getting married is like going to a restaurant with friends. You see all the wonderful food out there. You order what you want. And when you see what the other people ordered, you wish you had that instead. Number five, love is one long, sweet dream, and marriage is the alarm clock. 6, after marriage, husband and wife become two sides of a coin. They just can't face each other, but they still stay together. 7, someone married Miss Right. He just didn't know her first name was always. And last but not least, it's not true that married men live longer than single men. It only seems longer. Now, if you think about these, they're all very cute and funny. But within there is a real sadness. A sadness about what we really think about when it comes to our marriages. And then what it really is saying is that being married means you're stuck in this empty, lonely existence. And it doesn't have to be that way. And with all seriousness, what you have to think about, being in an unhealthy marriage can have such disastrous effects on people. You know, you get married because you fell in love and you want to live together for the rest of your life. But sometimes, in some relationships, that initial dream sometimes feels like a nightmare. An unhappy marriage can truly affect you both physically, psychologically, mentally, in all ways. Now let's talk about the physical impacts, because I think what some of the research has really shown us is that when you're in a happy marriage, your body responds appropriately. In different ways, it will be stronger. And if the marriage is unhealthy, what happens is you have a weakened immune system, so you get sick more. If you cut your finger and it starts to heal, or you have any injuries, the wounds are slower to heal when you're in an unhappy marriage. Your blood pressure is higher. There's risks to heart attack that are double, if not triple, to those that are in a relationship. Your sleep habits are poorer. You have more to worry about. You're doing things, and you and your partner may be arguing and up till 2 or 3 in the morning. It's sort of interesting to me when I talk with couples and they're having these conflicts, they end up staying up really, really late, which has them more tired, fighting more, doing things that they have to undo at another time, and they don't realize that this is what's causing half the battle. The focus on having a happy relationship is life-saving. This was interesting. When I was doing some of the research, what I found out is that what their research has shown is that people in an unhappy marriage, your brain cells don't renew in the way that they need to. As a matter of fact, it kills brain cells. Statistics that when I was doing the research, was that at the age of around 40, the impact on women who are in unhappy relationships is significantly greater than the one on men. Now, I think that might be because traditionally, women need that emotional attachment. It seems more than men. But what I find is that's not accurate. What I find is now, today, more and more, I see that marital strife on men impact them just in a different kind of way. Maybe not as much from the physical end, but when it comes to things like being productive, feeling good, self-esteem, men have as big of a challenges as women do. But the research has shown that more women, and I think it might also be that women talk about it more so that they would share how the bad relationship may be impacting them. Now, mentally, how does it influence you? What we know is that your attention span is not as great. I can tell you from my experience that when things at home aren't going well, I am not as productive here. The memory of what happened between my wife and I comes flooding in. Now, as professional as I am, and today I'm able to do this, I can detach from that and put it aside and stay focused on the clients. But for a lot of years, it was something that was so hard. When I came to work after fighting with my wife, and now sitting there with a couple that's talking about an issue, and for the most part, my experience was, I wish I was them. I wish I had that problem, and just that problem. So work suffered. I wasn't as productive. I wasn't able to really do the job that I need to do, such as coming up with ideas for a podcast. I wasn't doing the podcast, luckily, at the time. But think about it. I would not be here today if I had stayed married to my ex-wife. Because that marriage, that relationship, had me feeling so awful about me. Now, how did it do that? That's really an entire episode. But what I'm here to tell you is that fixing your relationship, having a relationship where the two people feel connected, will impact you not only at home, but at work too. My family, one of the things that I know, if you have a relationship in which you and your partner aren't doing well, your memory doesn't work so well. And the Fensterheims, and there's a lot of us out there, have an expression that says, in terms of memory, we have a family disease called CRS. Anyone know what that is? Can't remember shit. I will tell you, I had CRAFT. Craft. Can't remember a fucking thing when I was married and when the relationship we were struggling in. So all of you now have something that you can turn to your partners and say, guess what? Fensterheim has CRAFT, craft, can't remember a fucking thing. But the message is, if your relationship isn't working, what does it do to your brain? It puts you at risk for more mental illness, depression, anxiety, all the things that have such a devastating effect. When we start talking about a ripple effect, if you're in a relationship and you're depressed and you're not sleeping and you go to your doctor and say, doctor, I'm having trouble sleeping. The problem is a lot of physicians don't ask questions about your marriage. They used to. I remember growing up, they used to ask, but I don't remember the last time anyone asked me how my marriage was. And you tell them, I'm really depressed, I can't get out of bed. What do? They pull out their prescription pad and they write a prescription for antidepressants or sleeping pills, and never dealing with the real issue that's causing the problem, which is the marriage, which is the relationship, which they should be doing before anything else. I am an advocate of this. If you have a married person in your office and he's coming in talking about depression, people are going to hate me for this, but I absolutely believe don't write a prescription until you've looked at the behavioral, social issues. And doctors don't do that. And why do you think we have such an epidemic in this country of pill popping? Because that's what doctors do. One of the saddest things when I was working in managed care is I would find doctors, psychiatrists, family doctors don't be given the time to do the assessment, to find that out. So what ends up happening is people go into doctor's office and psychiatrist's office, never dealing the issues, just coming for the script, the doctors write it, and here we are today with this problem. Deal with the relationship issues, and I guarantee you, sleep is improved, depression is less, anxiety doesn't happen, all these things. And guess what, guys and ladies? Do you know what else it does? It increases your risk for dementia and Alzheimer's. That's what I said. You heard me. It increases the risk for dementia and Alzheimer's a neurological disorder, which means if you work on your relationship and you're in your 40s or 50s, your risk of dementia and Alzheimer's goes down. That's exciting news, but it also could be scary if you're in a relationship where two people aren't working at this. Now, how does it impact you emotionally? I mean, some of this is self-explanatory, but with depression, higher rate of suicide, suicidal thoughts, affairs, addictions, all these things can be much more easily dealt with if you're in an emotionally connected relationship. Mood swings. And one of the last ones that I want to mention here is this impatience that we all have with ourselves, that we want to fix it today. And I understand that passion, and I'm a believer in that. But if you're in a good relationship, you know it's going to be okay because you and your partner are in it together. You know, the biggest problem is how do you deal with it? And the feeling of being so alone, and the feeling that all I want to do is have the pain go away, because I talk about this a lot when we're needing authentic relationship and don't have it. What does that mean about me? I remember when I was with my ex-wife and things were looking so dismal, the question I kept echoing back was, why can't I do this? I love this person. We have 2 children. Why can't she feel the love? Maybe it's me. She would tell me that, particularly when we were triggered. And I'd fight her tooth and nail. I'd say, you're full of it. Look at yourself. But then after the fight, when it was all over and it was time for bed, the thoughts start coming pretty rapidly. Maybe she's right. Maybe it is me. Maybe I'm just not cut out for this. Maybe, my parents were divorced. Maybe it's something genetic. And the doubt that enters your head and keeps you there is awful. There's nothing worse than not believing that love will be in your future or your present. And then when we reflect back, sometimes your past too. Because we believe the lies of our partners who tell it to us, particularly when they're upset. And we believe this is someone who loves us, particularly when things are going well. So what we end up doing is saying they loved us. Maybe what they're telling me is correct. And even if you fight it tooth and nail in front of them, those doubts creep in. And we begin to accept what we have is all that we're entitled to. And I'm here, loud and clear, to tell you once and for all, it's nonsense. You and your partner, even the ones that have this awful interaction, if the two of you do this as a couple, you can have the dream of love, the dream of connection, the dream that says both of you can be incredibly important to one another, and that person that you're having that kind of interaction with, which is awful, which is yelling, which is name-calling, which is hostility, which is saying the most degrading things to each other, if you understand that what's going on in front of you is about the lack of ability to know how to reach your partner in a healthy way. And if you do it, you could have the dream of both of you feeling loved and knowing that you're with someone you can be authentic and vulnerable with. And that's the message here. That's the message that I want to send to all of you over and over again, as many times and in many ways as I can, with my videos, with my blogging, with my podcast, because unless you submerge yourself with positive messages, unless you only interact with people who love you and care about the two of you and send the message to both of you, and both of you do it in the privacy and publicly and in every action and in every word that you do, that love is possible, love is real, and that the two of you can do this. You can convince each other that your relationship is worth the energy because the other side is worse. Not being together is worse, because you two will dedicate every ounce of your being to having that kind of relationship. And you have to tell your partner this. Don't delay. Do that today, by the way. No matter how unhealthy it is, turn to your partner and say, I listened to that guy. I listened to the Couples Expert podcast. That podcast says there is a method out of the madness. There is a way to have a relationship where both of you feel loved and significant, and that this marriage will meet our needs that we have that are going to change the nature of our life because we're in this together. What I want you to understand here, that a relationship that's working is sort of like a life preserver or a seatbelt. Because if you're in a relationship that's working, anything that will come your way will help the two of you. But the opposite is also true. If you're in an unhappy relationship, it's like living in the Marquis de Sade's world. So here are the things that sometimes may occur in an unhappy marriage. We have a lack of communication, not talking about the things that we need to talk about, not feeling like we can address how we really feel. And so what we do is we hide. We feel like I can't show who I am. We have frequent fighting. You know, a little argument, as I mentioned earlier, my wife and I had this little tiff today about the Dayquil. That's not going to affect us when she comes home from church. We won't even mention it. But that wouldn't be the case if more times than not, these fights got ugly. So here's what I want you to do. I want you to turn to your partners and talk about the fact that you haven't made important enough the relationship. If you have, I'm not telling you to turn and be deceptive, but what I want you to do is turn to your partners and let them know that you have an increased awareness of the value that the two of you have right in your hands, and that you're going to make it important. You're going to do something about it. You're going to look at yourself. You're going to look at the two of you together, both of you really doing the things that are necessary to have both of you feel happy, and that your partner's happiness means as much to you as your own. And if you're someone that has refused counseling in the past, and the two of you need counseling, and not every relationship does, please, 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 please don't delay. Because what we know is that people end up coming into our offices as couples counselors approximately 6 years too late. And then before you know it, what's happening is the dissolution more than anything. So counseling becomes the last-ditch effort. Don't make counseling the last-ditch effort, make it the first. Your happiness as an individual, the way you see yourself, the way you see your world, the way you see your business, the way you see your friendships, the way you see everything is impacted by the nature of the two of you. And if you truly believe that, I put out this video series that's going to be coming out shortly, and I was recording it, and there was a part of it that I want to share. And the part that is so important was the analogy that I made that a poor relationship is like a metastasis, a cancer eating away at your very being. And it doesn't have to be that way. So what I want to leave you with today is a couple of things. One is, I've talked over and over about you turning to your partner, so please do that. The other is I want you to stand back and evaluate the things that are working and not working for you as an individual, and ask your partner for support. Turn to them and say, I'm going to be working on me. Do not, this is a very strong do not ask them to do this. You're doing this on your own, about you, not looking at them. Look inwardly, not outwardly. I'm going to be the best me that I can be. What you're doing by saying that is you're sending the message to them that you're going to be the best partner that you can be for them. And the caveat that we're not going to talk about is hopefully they'll do the same. And that's what I've seen countless times. Is people start with themselves, their partners see it happening, and then the partner does it too. And then the two of them get in, and before you know it, you have someone in your life that you love, that loves you, and that the two of you are in this world together, creating a life that most people are in awe about. Having a relationship with someone that has your back, that loves you, and that the two of you are living the dream. Take care, stay connected, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.
Thank you for listening. This episode has ended, but your journey continues. Head over to www.thecouplesexperts.com to access all the links and resources mentioned in this episode, as well as bonus content exclusive to podcast listeners. Enjoyed this episode? Why not hit subscribe now and never miss an episode?